Hello, my name is Sam Feltham, and welcome to Expert Interviews here on Smash the Fat. With me today is someone I came across towards kind of the beginning of the month as I was kind of perusing through the Times. Amazingly, there was a section on the high-fat diet, which I didn't expect to see at all. And thankfully, the author of The High-Fat Diet is with us today. Author and entrepreneur and personal trainer, health aficionado is Zana Morris. How you doing, Zana?
Hello, Sam.
How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Great to be here.
Fantastic to have you on, and it's fantastic to kind of see that that what we've been saying is starting to kind of make it into the mainstream, not just through kind of all of the things that we do, but other people are kind of on their own coming to similar conclusions, and then kind of saying, look guys, we need to kind of be going down this line of thought to approach these problems. Now, kind of before we get into the high-fat diet itself, which you wrote along with your co-author Helen Foster, what I want to find out exactly is how did you get into this craziness that is health and fitness?
Oh, a very long time ago. Straight up, I had a mum who was crazy into nutrition and vitamins and supplements and all that kind of thing. So I sort of grew up in a household where it was almost the norm to try the latest diet. We had the Life Extension book, the really old 70s one, sitting on the counter kind of for most of my life, my childhood. So I've always loved it. Really got into it, though, when I was in my late teens. Trying out just about every diet. I was big into yoga in those days, so I was big into trying out either vegetarian or fruit diets, all the various forms of fasting, that kind of thing, but got involved with a local gym at the time and was fascinated by all their plans because, quite frankly, the traditional old-fashioned bodybuilders really knew how to get into shape. They knew. And so you'd low fat, you'd every kind of plans going. So it was sort of my world. I loved anything to do with health stores, nutrition. It just fascinated me. So I'd say I really got into it in my late teens, kind of at university. I studied as a nutritionist while I was studying languages actually at university. I was just fascinated by it.
Absolutely. So then kind of you qualified as a nutritionist.
Yes.
And then you went on to set up the Library Gym,
Yes.
which is in West London, and it's also kind of got slightly smaller gyms on Harley Street and somewhere else that I can't remember. Where's the other one?
West London, in Barnes, yes.
There you go, fantastic. So yeah, how did you come to kind of set those up?
Well, between my early 20s of playing with nutrition and running health stores in Ireland through to my early 30s was sort of a whole learning curve where I got involved in personal training, qualified as an instructor, and realised you can't really do one without the other. Getting into shape, you need the nutrition, you need the training. Mm-hmm. I worked in Ireland for a little while, primarily actually in those days as a yoga instructor. Was in the States for a short while where I qualified on the personal training side of things, came to London and nearly about 10 years ago now, and was doing personal training, had got involved with the high intensity training at that stage. And in the very early days was working with a company called Pretox Gym who loved the high intensity training and helped them evolve in the early days. But I really, really wanted to bring it a step further. I love the short intensity, high intensity training. It works. The nutrition, I just don't think you can get into shape without getting the nutrition right. I just don't think you can do one without the other. And then and I say we because I met who's become my business partner since, a lady called Karen Wellman. We were just fascinated by the idea of how do you bring gyms that are just far more inviting rather than the old-fashioned kind of all in a treadmill, almost racing against each other kind of feel and format. So the library was a way, can we bring a gym that makes you feel like you're at home? Still, we can kill you on the training and we'll get you doing the nutrition, but at least let the rest of it be warm, feel like you want to be there. So the library was that. It was really bringing you somewhere where you wanted to get to be and spend time in.
Absolutely, because the gyms themselves are absolutely beautiful. I highly recommend everybody going to the website, which is thelibrarygym.com, because they're so aesthetically pleasing. And I'm going to have to come visit and perhaps
Definitely.
partake in a workout, because it looks like a fantastic environment to work out. And kind of that's maybe something that kind of we need to start to address in the fitness industry, is kind of, you know, trying to develop nice places to work out. You know, it's all good and well,
Yeah.
you know, trying to you know, push yourself to work out in a muddy park or something like that. But there's nothing wrong with kind of, you know, working out in a nice environment. You know, what's wrong with that?
It's so true. It's so true. Well, I was hitting my late 20s when I realized I wasn't enjoying gyms. In my early 20s, I loved any gym. And I used to do kickboxing from a really rough boxing gym, and I loved it. But in my late 20s, and I was like, oh, you know, I kind of would like a bit more. And I was also feeling self-conscious walking into gyms. I was a trainer, and if I was feeling self-conscious, it made me think, what about all the people who actually don't really want to be in the gym, don't really know what they're doing? You know, if I was uncomfortable, what were they feeling like? So it was, how do we take that edge off and make people actually feel it's okay to come, and it's okay to know nothing, it's okay to be starting from scratch, and equally it's okay to know everything and just bring it up a notch. Just make it feel, you know, a nice place to be. Not everyone wants to be in a nice place, a lot do.
Absolutely, definitely, definitely. And the library is kind of such an appropriate name for it, because obviously a library is somewhere where you learn, you know, and you look through all the books, and you know, it's almost like trying to be a detective, that you're trying to find out all these things, and that's what I kind of get from the library. Was that kind of the point behind the name?
Totally, totally. I love you say detective. I absolutely adore anything from Sherlock Holmes right the way through. I love that. But
Absolutely.
that's exactly it. It was somewhere where you could learn. There was knowledge, but dare I say, and I know it sounds maybe a bit kind of cliche, but some intelligence, because there's so many fads and so many whims and so many things out there, and it's very hard to kind of just get through it all and work out what works, what doesn't work, what's accurate, what's not. And there's somewhere where it just felt there was an element of intelligence about it. Both in terms of the learning, we do have guest speakers down on occasion for the clients, exactly that, where they could sit, they could relax, and at the same time, when they do train, we'll train them properly. There's no faffing. we like our training.
Fantastic. And that kind of brings us to the high-fat diet, which has kind of been your dietary advice that you've kind of been giving out to clients. And Helen Foster, your co-author, is actually kind of one of your clients that tried the diet and achieved fantastic results. So tell us about kind of, you know, how the high-fat diet first came about, and then we'll properly get into what exactly it is.
Well, Helen first came to us. She came as a client. The trouble was she didn't live close to the library or any of our libraries at all. So she was one of the few I let loose, giving her the plan and trying to keep an eye on her from afar, because in the early days, high fat, in my experience, and I need to be careful saying this, but it's true, it's a quick way to get fat if you go mix it all up.
Yeah.
You just ignore the calorie diet. So in the early days, it was an absolute fear that somebody would just run off with a plan and try it out, mixing it with everything else. So we used to be very cautious, very cautious. So Helen was one of the few we kind of said, right, okay, and kind of watched her. And in fairness, she got it right. And when we wrote the book, we really tried to keep an eye out on all the mistakes people potentially make when doing a plan like it. I came across a version of this in my early 20s, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I was a classic, I'm going to say, I don't know, I was vegetarian for a short while. This was in my late teens, early 20s. I was crazy into my yoga, and I loved training, so I wasn't necessarily, you know, I did kickboxing at the time, I did do weight training at the time, but I loved the whole kind of, you know, keep the meat out and, you know, try and stay slim that way, keep the fat down. I grew up on the whole idea of fat's bad. You know, we grew up with my mum was into her nutrition big time, but we hadn't quite figured out that maybe it wasn't margarine we should be living on. So it was all that skim milk kind of era. And I spent most of my early 20s with at least one day a week just kind of thinking I could eat a box of cereal. I just out of the blue would think I'm just really hungry. And it was only when I got back into getting the fat in, which was totally against my entire upbringing. I mean, putting butter back on the table was like complete horror. Getting all the red meat back, no, not a chance. But it was only then that I realized I stopped thinking about food completely. I was just ate when I was hungry, didn't when I wasn't. I just suddenly got this rhythm. Absolutely any cravings, all of that side vanished. Now, I'll eat almost anything. I'm not one of these that will never eat something. I like food. And if there's a treat to be had, if I want it, I'll have it. But what I love about basing things around the fat and the high fat is that you don't actually crave. So it's a choice rather than an urge, kind of a necessity, if you like. So I came across it again in one of these gyms where the guys were actually knew how to get into shape, were getting into shape. And that was in my early 20s. And over the years, I was on the strict versions of it for years. I now follow probably more of a modified version. And started working with clients on it about 10 years ago, actually maybe 12 years ago at this stage. And over the years, I just modified it slightly to allow for mistakes they can make or ways we can accelerate it. But by the time Helen came in, we had it relatively perfected. We just weren't used to people walking out the door with it in their hand, where we couldn't catch them on a regular basis every few days to see what they were at and where they might be cheating. But she did stunningly from it, stunningly well. The occasional phone call with a help. But overall,
yeah, you've got to, definitely. And amazingly, yeah, the high fat diet now is kind of available throughout the UK and in the US via Amazon. If people want to check it out, they can follow our links, smashthefat.com/HFDUK if you want to get it on amazon.co.uk, or if you want to get it on amazon.com, follow smashthefat.com/HFDUS, and that will help support the show, so make sure that you follow those links. Now, the actual high fat diet itself, to a lot of people, as you say, kind of you grew up on the low fat message, drinking skim milk along with your cereal and everything like that. So kind of, saying the high fat diet, it almost feels like it's kind of like a curse word to some people. So what exactly does it mean?
Well, completely. I'll be the first to admit when I first heard it, I sort of held my breath. In those days, though, I tried a lot of nutrition plans, so I was up for it, but I really did hold my breath. I mean, the beauty is the fat doesn't have to be animal fats if you don't want it to be. It can be avocados, nuts, things like walnuts, pine nuts, macadamia nuts, all work stunningly well on it. So you can have what people traditionally consider healthy fats on this. It doesn't have to be butter and meats. I might argue, I'm not sure if they're, I'm not entirely against the saturated fat either, to be really honest. But that said, you can go with the vegetarian but kind of nut options, absolutely. If you don't like dairy, you can stay away from the dairy options. And that said, if you do, cheese comes into play. To get the extra fat, and cream cheese is fantastic. Beauty I find with the plan, and certainly was one of the things that I absolutely loved with it, is energy levels get really good and sleep gets much better. Just the depth of sleep is so much, the quality of sleep is so much better. So there's a lot of advantages, not just feeling full and burning the fat, which is obviously what most people are on it for, is to lose fat, but actually how you feel, I think, is so much better.
Definitely. And how exactly kind of does it work? For people that haven't been introduced to it, a lot of our listeners are kind of low carb, high fat dieters already. But for anybody that's kind of coming across it, how does this work? How can fat make you thin, Zana? Explain.
It's brilliant. Okay, there's two things this diet does. The first is it really helps stabilize insulin. So any weight around the middle tends to be related to your body releasing a little bit too much insulin. Stabilize that, and the fat drops, particularly from the middle, very fast. Most people don't realize there's only one food group that doesn't cause the body to raise any insulin at all. So most people will know that your sugars are the worst. They cause a big surge. But even proteins cause a little bit of a spike. Not a major one, but even things like your white fish, there's a little bit of an insulin increase. Fat is the only food group that has no impact on insulin at all. So hence it is a high-fat plan. However, this does work a second way, which I love, and this is the bit that really kind of baffles a lot of people. On this plan, your body switches from burning sugars as its primary fuel into burning fat as its primary fuel. So a bit like an electric kind of petrol car, it switches into the electric, if you like, it switches into the fat. Once it does that, it drives into your own body fat. Bizarrely on this plan, the more fat you eat, it's almost like throwing oil on to make it flame. The flame flares up. So when you're on it correctly and your body's driving into those fat stores, the more fat you eat, your energy drives up and your body burns more fat. If you cut back on the fat, you actually slow it down. It's a bit like taking the fuel away. So it's quite astonishing how it drives the metabolism up. The biggest mistake people make is they cut back on the fat intake thinking it will accelerate results. It doesn't. It actually slows it down.
Absolutely, it's kind of like opening the floodgates, isn't it? I mean, it allows kind of the fat to be unquarantined, which it has been done for kind of so many years of kind of, you know, low fat, high carb dieting, and particularly fake foods as well. And now that you kind of open up the floodgates and all the fat comes out and you just kind of burn through all of this, and kind of your appetite goes down, as you say, your sleep gets better, your blood sugar's more stable, so your mood is a lot better and things like this. It just kind of makes the body work as though it's supposed to work like that.
It's a stunning plan, and I love it as well, because if you're very overweight, your appetite almost vanishes because your body has all this backup fuel. And equally, if somebody underweight goes on it, they're hungry all the time. They need to eat 5 meals a day. It actually drives their appetite if they're actually underweight. Mm-hmm. So it has a bizarre regulating mechanism where a lot of other plans that you do just through sheer willpower they don't have it. Whereas there seems to be almost a self-protection mechanism in it. Yeah. You can't, if you are underweight to begin with, you will just want to eat all the time on it. That said, once you've got weight to lose, the appetite just goes and your body happily works on your own body fat.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's absolutely brilliant. So what exactly for yourself do you eat kind of on a daily basis? And I mean, you kind of mentioned there before the avocados and nuts and things like that. But for yourself, what would kind of a regular day look like?
I don't have early breakfasts. I tend to often eat later. I don't eat first thing in the morning. I sort of wait till I've kind of woken up. So
that's going to make you fat, Zana. A lot of my listeners just went over that, but anyway.
Yes, I love that. Where it's really happy when you wake up. It really depends on whether you're hungry or not, or whether you're
exactly. Eat when you're hungry.
Exactly. So I do like my kind of poached eggs and avocado work very, very well. I do eat, because I won't do the high fat version all the time. I'll do more of a kind of a maintenance game. I do like Greek yogurt. Mm-hmm. And I will have kind of berries and things like that at that stage, but not again every morning, but I will do that. I love my nuts. I love my nut butter. So if I'm doing anything with yogurts, that tends to go in. I tend to, most days, not every day, but most days, I tend to only eat twice a day. So I end up with a late breakfast and sort of an early evening meal. I won't do that every day, but most days. I love my fish. I love my meat. I only eat meat maybe about twice a week. Mm-hmm. Red meat. That's pure laziness. Simply put, fish is just quicker to cook, I think.
True that.
So I love my greens. I love salads, and for me, when people say, "What about kind of if you want something quick?" I hand on heart have to say salads are the quickest thing you can prepare. Mm-hmm. It's just for me throwing a whole load of kind of greens and nuts and seeds and some fish into a bowl with some dressing on it. And people tend to like my salads, but I find they're just fast food. It's food on the go. That said, I will eat most foods. There are things I rarely eat. I don't eat rice much, but it's just because I find at this stage I don't digest it very well. So it's once in a very blue moon, and pasta is the same, once in a very blue moon. Love my greens. I mean, last night I had swordfish on a bed of broccoli, and I made it into a version of a Thai curry. So I cooked it in coconut oil and put in some nut butter and a lot of ginger and chili and everything in it, and put it on a bed of vegetables. So I like cooking. I like my food, and I like it to taste, which sort of helps.
Mm-hmm.
Fat holds the flavour. You can add in all sorts of seasonings to fat, and it just soaks the flavour up.
That's it. And kind of for me, herbs and spices are probably the most underutilized thing in the kitchen for people, because they always think, oh, I just kind of should be just steak and broccoli, and that's kind of the foundation, say,
Yeah.
of a meal. But kind of, when you put seasonings on top, then it completely transforms the meal, kind of lifts up certain tastes, and also kind of just brings a new dynamic into it. So trying to get into your herbs and spices, which ups the amount of nutrients that you're going to be having as well,
Exactly.
is kind of, the next step into, trying to maintain this style of real food diet, and also, variety is the spice of life, and spices are the variety of life, I guess.
Exactly, exactly, so true. And when you get fat in meals, it just really, it emphasises the flavour. You really get the flavour in it. When you take the fat out, you have to work hard to get those spices to kick. But with fat, it just is a different meal. It really soaks up. I'm going through this ginger and chili phase where I'm using fresh ginger and chili and just about everything.
Definitely. I'm there with you all the way. I'm really kind of obsessed with cinnamon and ginger at the moment. In my coffee, or my my kind of 100% hot chocolates as well.
Yeah.
So it's just just a level teaspoon of cocoa powder, 100% cocoa powder, along with some cinnamon, ginger. Then you just top up the mug about 3/4 full of water, and then top it up with some cream, and that's just kind of, the best hot chocolate, a healthy hot chocolate at that you're ever going to have. And kind of during this winter time, that's kind of my top tip. For kind of staying warm.
That in hours, nice.
Do it. It's awesome. I love it. Now, in chapter 3, you kind of talk about a 4-day Pretox. So what's that?
That was because for a lot of people starting on a plan like this, if you're coming from a low-fat background, which I was in the very early days, the fat can be a bit of a shock to the body. It might be used to digesting that much fat all of a sudden. It's rich. Equally, if you're on quite a high carb background, and there's a lot of carbs or sugars or breads, or it can be anything from chocolates to just lots of pasta getting in there. Again, suddenly withdrawing that can be a bit of a shock to the system, and you can get a bit of a sugar withdrawal. So the Pretox was just to help ease people in. When we're seeing clients every day in the gyms, it's very easy for us to catch people on the 2nd or 3rd day and gauge how well they're faring and give them a few tips so that they don't have quite a shock to their system. Obviously, with readers, sadly, we're not going to get to see everybody, so we just assume that they need easing in so that they don't. So effectively, it's a way of getting a little bit more fat in until your body gets used to it. So by the time you hit the 10-day Blitz, you can go for it. And equally, getting the carbs out, but not completely, so you don't get quite the withdrawal symptoms. As a rule, we tend not to recommend that people give up teas and coffees on the 12-day or the 14-day kind of Blitz. Not for any other reason other than there may be a sugar withdrawal, and do you want a caffeine withdrawal at the same time?
Yeah, that's just kind of asking for trouble.
It kind of is. Well, we used to do it within the gyms just for our own sake, because clients would be very, very, very grumpy by day 4. Yeah. So we thought we'd better leave one of the drugs in there. That said, you obviously can do both. It's often when people are doing something new and fresh, they want to do everything. You can just be prepared that there's 2 withdrawals potentially going on at that point. So we thought sugar was enough. And then when you got over that one, you can consider the caffeine one.
You do have to be very mindful of that. If you can kind of do everything at once, then that's absolutely fine. But I recommend the same. Just start off with the sugar, and you can address your caffeine if you are drinking too much caffeine. You can kind of address that at a later point. But kind of, sugar is obviously kind of the main one when we're dealing with somebody that's trying to lose weight. And as you said, kind of in there as well, once they've done that 4-day Pretox, then they go on to the 10-day Blitz. Now, what exactly is that?
Right, the 10-day Blitz is where we're expecting your body to go out of the out of the sugar burning properly. So it'll be burning sugar as its fuel. Even in the Pretox, it'll still be burning sugar as the primary fuel source, but it won't be getting quite the same hits. The insulin will be a lot more stable. By the time we're in the 10-day blitz, the sugar is withdrawn completely, so the body has to find another fuel source, which it does obviously in the fat. On that 10-day blitz, the fat levels go up because you need that fuel. That's what's going to be helping you burn the fuel effectively, and the sugar is effectively out. It's quite specific that getting those ratios right. We do need to get enough fat, slightly. The protein content isn't very high. It's in there. There's a very steady amount with each meal, but we're not looking for high protein. Too much protein, bizarrely, can slow this down as well.
That's right.
Because if the protein gets too high and the fat's too low, the body can still sneak some sugars out of the protein. So we're aiming to keep the protein down and get that fat up for this stage. Ideally, during those 10 days, you're better off doing it, quite frankly, you're better off doing it 100% for 5 or 6 days than 85% for all of the 10. Because it works so fast when it's done correctly. But should you sneak the sugars in, I've had this even slow down, and we mentioned this in the book, I had it slow down even by chewing sugar-free gum when I tried it before at one point. I had tried it twice, as in over about a 3-year period. I tried it about 3 or 4 times over a 2-week period. And on the 3rd time, I couldn't understand why it wasn't working quite the same way. And it was as simple as sugar-free gum being chewed on it, that when I stopped, it kicked right back in again. So you do want to get those 10 days right. If you do, the results are astonishingly fast.
Yeah, as with most things in life, the more that you put into it, the more that you'll get out. And if you kind of follow this plan to the letter, just for 10 days, then kind of you'll reap the benefits after that. Now, after those 10 days, what do people do?
Right, we've given a maintenance plan, as in for another 2 weeks at the end of this book. Quite frankly, in my experience with this, with clients, as long as, if you want to go back to how you were eating before, that's fine. Just let go of all the fat. You don't want to be on a high fat plan, so you don't want to be hanging on to, well, I like the cream and my coffee, and I like the cream cheese, but I miss my bread. If you start mixing it all up, then yes, in my experience, you want to make a calorie plan. You won't keep the weight off. The main thing when you come to the end of it is, if you don't want to follow the maintenance we give, then get the fat out again. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
As long as you don't mix it all up, you will be fine. In my experience, if there was just one thing people did, and it's not so much worry about how much or how little fat you're having. In my experience with our clients, if you keep the sugars and the carbs to a minimum, so we recommend with clients, have them once or twice a week. Just don't have them every day with every meal. So we're not opposed to people having pasta or bread or anything, quite frankly, but keep them to a couple of times a week. And even with alcohol, if they keep it to a couple of times a week, they actually keep getting into better and better shape. It's really when it's just a dependency with every meal that I find things go awry. In the book, though, we do have a maintenance plan to kind of ease people off the high fat into something that, if they like the idea of fat in there, to ease them into something that they can then progress into normal living, if you like, that allows for social lives and nights out and everything else. And really, it's gently introducing some of the carbohydrates, gently introducing some of the fruit again, easing down on the fat as we do that. I personally love, as in a long-term maintenance, I like keeping my fat in. I don't want to go. I never want to go on a low-fat plan again. Extreme circumstances. I like my fat, and I just find it easier if you. As I said earlier, I'll eat anything, but most of the time I won't. So I don't have bread every day, and I certainly don't have pasta every day. But I will have kind of like a rye bread a couple of times a week. My sister lives in Rome. I visit her. I'll eat the pasta that gets presented in front of me. It's proper Italian fresh pasta, but I won't do it on a regular basis at home. I personally think if you eliminate everything, you can sort of, that's when you end up wanting it. So I like living where you can have what you like, but let the majority of the time be kind of a good maintenance. Have the fat in there, keep protein with every meal, and a bit of, if you do eat fish and meat, a bit of fish or meat with every meal. Alternatively, if you don't, quinoa, or get the vegetarian sources, even lentils can be very good. Just get a bit of protein with each meal, and then just keep an eye on the carbohydrate intake. This is different if you're vegan, as I'm sure you know. This is a whole different ballpark. this is, I have to be honest, for those that aren't vegan. Vegan, we'd approach it differently.
Yeah, it can be quite complicated when it kind of comes to vegans. Vegetarians can kind of manage it quite reasonably, I'd say,
Yeah,
but vegans kind of another level, and that needs some real personal attention and
yeah.
some tailored diet plans for that to kind of actually happen. And do you deal with vegans at all at the library, or?
We do at the library. Sadly, we didn't in the book because there's a whole
Yeah,
different
of
approach.
course.
So when we're dealing with vegans, you are dealing more with food combining and getting
Yeah.
the most out of the combinations of protein. So your beans and your rice, there's a certain amount of protein in the rice, there's a certain amount of protein in the beans, and you're looking at those kind of combinations and
Hmm.
ensuring there's a good quality with each meal. Vegans, and now a lot of vegans I know are stunningly good at their nutrition and get it right.
Yeah.
That said, if they're getting it wrong, it is so dramatic when you get it right with a vegan, how they can feel, how their energy levels go up, how their stamina goes up. It's probably the most dramatic result of getting nutrition right. So it can be quite fun working with vegans. It can be
A
quite
good challenge.
yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Now, kind of after all of that, you talk about your high intensity exercise plan as well. Now, when do you introduce that along the timeline of the diet?
In an ideal world, we'd like the readers doing it while they're on the 10-day blitz. So the
Hmm.
aim is during the Pretox, use the Pretox almost like a practice zone. Get your head around the high intensity training. If you're going to be doing it in a gym, it allows you 2 or 3 shots at the gym to figure out the equipment, figure out the exercises, work out how you can get the intensity in, maybe even work out the time of day you should be in that gym to allow you move from one piece of equipment to the next. Equally, if you're doing it at home, it allows you time to work out the exercises and even just build your stamina up. Ideally, on the 10 days, you want to be going for it. So each day, you want to, whether it's in a gym or at home, you want to be blitzing it and working it through that. And ideally, you want to be doing it every day.
Fantastic, and absolutely smashing it from there, I'm sure. Now, it is kind of a mixture of strength training and interval
Mm-hmm.
training. And what's kind of one of the basic workout plans that people will be able to do?
We've divided it up into a home workout and a gym workout. So gym workout we divide into body parts. So in other words, you might be doing a legs routine one day, a shoulders and arms routine another, a chest and back another day. And if a person trains in the gym, if a reader trains in the gym already, you'll probably recognize most, if not all, of the exercises. The only difference is we're getting them back to back. We've got a set amount for each body part, so you're really targeting every aspect of the muscle. So, for example, a shoulder routine, it's the front, it's the mid, and it's the rear deltoid, so you're getting the entire shoulder, if you like. And the key is just the no resting. So you can use a standard gym with standard gym equipment. It's not rocket science. The key is just don't rest and lift the maximum weight that you can lift. It doesn't matter if that's 10 pounds or 110 pounds. It's your maximum. Home workout, because you're not getting the weights with it, we're aiming for the speed, and we do the entire body each day. It's not quite as intense. That said, you can get it to be quite aerobically intense because we give you a lot of squats and a lot of lunges, which really work the entire body. So it does end up being quite aerobic. But we do work everything in the body on the home workout.
So pretty comprehensive plan that people can check out in the book. I kind of just flick through here. There's plenty of pictures and things like that people can kind of follow for that. And then also kind of towards the back, you have recipes in there for people to kind of, experiment with their foods. And then at the end, you talk about the 10 rules for staying slim for life. Because this isn't just about, getting to a certain point and then going back to the way that you're eating before. It's about a lifelong plan as well. So kind of what's the essence of that?
Exactly. I mean, from the years of working with clients in the gyms, you are really looking at not just getting people in shape, because dare I say that's almost the easy bit. You really want to keep in that shape. And I think what I love most about the high fat plan is the effect it has on appetite and people's understanding of food and what they're eating. So the one thing almost every client I've ever met learns from it is that actually they were eating when they really weren't hungry at all. They were adding in extra meals or snacks out of sheer habit. And you tend to get an automatic draw by the end of the Blitz to what works for you. You begin to realize, okay, I didn't really need that meal, or if I did, I didn't need quite so much of that meal. You get your rhythm with it. So from my experience, it's just as simple as don't eat if you're not hungry. It really, really makes a difference. And equally, just getting breakfast right. If people got breakfast right, I think we would slash obesity down a heck of a lot. I'm not saying it's the only thing. I'm really not. It's a major thing. Spike your insulin in the morning. It's very hard to get it back in its box, so to speak, during the rest of the day. If you can get it right, you stabilize, get the breakfast right, you stabilize the insulin, you don't have the cravings, you don't start eating for the sake of eating. It has a whole different impact on your entire body. So for me, getting the breakfast right, don't eat when you're not hungry, and just don't be carb dependent, as in don't have carbs with every meal. It doesn't mean eliminate them completely. Just consider your meals. You can have stunning meals without having to have the breads, the rice, the pastas in there with it. The beauty of the whole recipes, and hopefully the whole period of the book, from the Pretox to the 10 days to the maintenance, will train people out of the necessity for carbs all the time. Those three things on their own, we have 10, but those three things on their own, honestly, will get somebody to stay in shape for life quite casually. We've got other things, you know, keeping the alcohol down twice a week, and there's a whole other little list in there. But honestly, I just find get the breakfast right, don't eat when you're not hungry, and don't have carbs with every meal, and actually you can do pretty well on those three.
That's fantastic advice, Zana. Absolutely fantastic. Now, we do have a few questions on the blog. And the first one is from Joanna Clark, who asked, I've been following the high-fat diet plan from the Times for 7 days and lost 5 pounds of fat so far. So the diet is absolutely brilliant. But she's finding that she's hungry between meals, but she's opting for the lower protein, higher fat quantities in the plan as she's female, obviously. What am I doing wrong? As I thought on this diet, you shouldn't be hungry. She's had to snack on cheese and chorizo a few times.
Okay, without seeing her, the person's starting point comes into play with this. So if somebody's very overweight, 2 meals a day would be more than enough, and they might even find 1 meal a day. If somebody is quite slim to begin with, 2 meals a day may be enough, but they may need a third. Mm-hmm. So the questions really you have to ask is, first, is there enough fat getting in there with each meal? It sounds like she's doing it correctly, but that's the first thing to check. Are you getting the quantities of fat in? If the answer to that is yes, then it is fine to consider a third meal, but don't consider it a snack. So the chorizo and the cheese, make sure it's cream cheese and not a hard cheese. Mm-hmm. Every snack is a meal on this, and with every meal you want a certain amount of protein and a certain amount of ratio of fat to that protein. And if you go hard cheese and chorizo, the protein goes too high. If the protein goes too high and the fat's too low, there'll be a little bit of a sugar or insulin surge as a result, and that can actually cause the hunger. Mm-hmm. So with the snack, make sure if it is a hard cheese, swap it for cream cheese, or just swap it for a good handful of walnuts, and that will work. It's a miniature meal. It may be no harm. I wouldn't worry about being a girl. The higher amount of protein, unless, and this is rare in my experience, because so many girls are terrified of building muscle. It is rare for a girl. It happens, but it's a lot more unusual than people think. It's rare for a girl to build bulky muscle in the space of 10 days in a plan like this.
Very much so.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. When we're doing it with guys to build muscle specifically, we change a lot of things about to really tweak it to get that build, that size. Mm-hmm. So go for the higher protein, by all means. Honestly, you won't bulk. As a girl, speaking as a girl, you don't, particularly if you're only on the 2 meals a day. There's not a huge amount of protein getting in there over the course of the day, and that might just solve it. So check the fat intake. If you're going to snack, consider it a meal and just get extra fat in there. Don't have it as a protein-based one. Have it as a higher fat, lower protein. And in this case, I would go the extra protein. It'll just improve the muscle tone, the shape.
Fantastic. So that kind of leads us on to John Mason's question, who asks, why do fitness coaches persist with the myth that you can tone muscle and firm up fat?
Okay, yes. Well, obviously you can't firm up fat, or if you do, you really don't want to.
Yeah.
Solid fat is very hard to get rid of. Trust me from experience. So you
Yeah, I
don't
remember
want
kind of talking about this before we started the interview, about people sort of talking about turning fat into muscle. Like
yeah,
I don't remember seeing that in any biochemistry
yeah.
textbooks or anything. It's kind of like a gold
Yeah,
alchemy type thing.
it is. It's like turning wood into metal. It doesn't happen. One does not turn into the other. So no, you definitely don't firm or make. Yeah, you don't firm up fat at all. Obviously, it dissolves or burns, if you like. Muscle tone. I mean, you've got the popular version of what muscle tone is.
Hmm.
Effectively, muscle tone really simply means, as many people will know, when you're relaxed, does your muscle look like you're tensing it, or does it look soft and flabby? If it looks like you're tensing it, you've got what we consider good muscle tone. Effectively, it's the nerve system. It's the whole fibers firing off. Your muscle is ready to go. Obviously, popularly, you're looking at muscle tone as your shape. It's the shape you're in. It's a sculpted look. You want to look a bit more like somebody sculpted you rather than a blob of a blob of muscle play there. You want to kind of have that Michelangelo look going on in some shape or form. The funny thing is with muscle, and particularly this goes for girls as much as guys, you need the muscle quite literally to sculpt yourself into the shape. That's what we're trying to do. You really do. Without it, you don't. You're flabby. You're hanging loose. You want that tightness. As to why, I mean, the muscle tone I get, effectively you are looking to develop a look of a muscle tone where the muscle is tight and taut. And I understand why that gets said a lot, but yeah, certainly fat you can't do much with apart from burn it. It's a fuel.
That's it. We just want to smash it. So,
exactly, yeah. Smash it. I love it. That's exactly it. Yes.
Precisely, fantastic. And then our last question is from Martin, who asked, "Hi Zana, I like your home workout exercises, so well done on that. What is your view on resistant starch?"
Yes, and it's a really good question, that. Resistant starch effectively is starch that's resistant to being absorbed, so it passes through the body. And yes, it's useful. There's no question it's useful. On the high-fat plan, the trouble is most forms of resistant starch come within foods that contain other carbohydrate, i.e. sugars, which will cause a little bit of an insulin kick. So sadly, on the high-fat, we tend to avoid anything that can be encased, if you like, in another carbohydrate form. So, in other words, potato has a resistant starch, green bananas have a resistant starch, but on the really strict Blitz version, even they will have a tiny bit too much of a sugar effect as such. So just for the purpose of the Blitz, I wouldn't add them in. On a maintenance or long term, not a problem. Just be careful which forms you're going for and how encased in the coffee. Like a grain that's been too modified, if you like, can cause a bit of a sugar kick too fast. So choose them wisely, I suppose, is my answer to that.
Definitely, and I'd add kind of, keeping the quantity small as well in terms of it. I mean, just a tablespoon worth can be beneficial kind of for your gut bacteria. So it's not like you're going to be having kind of, a bowl of rice. It's really just kind of, just a tablespoon or two of either cold rice or potato or whatever. So yeah, that's fantastic, Zana. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's greatly appreciated. And people, as I say, can buy the book on Amazon by either going to smashthefat.com/HFD UK if you want to buy it in the UK, or if you're in the US, go to smashthefat.com/HFDUS and you can get it there. You can follow Zana on Twitter at Zana Morris, or you can follow her gym at the Library Gym, and finally you can follow the High Fat Diet as well on Twitter at the High Fat Diet. I believe. Are there any other places that people can kind of get in contact with you or kind of see what you're doing?
I think you've pretty much hit off all three. Yes, direct. You can follow me directly, exactly, at Zana Morris. The gyms. I mean, I do work from the gyms. So if anybody is in London or coming through that way, we are doing. Some people have contacted us who've got the book, who just want a few sessions in the gym when they come to London, and we've done that for a number of readers. So yes, I think you've beautifully named them all. Thank you.
Fantastic, not a problem. That only leaves us with one thing to do that's very, very important on this show, and that's to hear a smash it out from Zana Morris. So on the count of 3, I want you to shout "smash it out" to the camera. So 1, 2, 3.
Smash it out!
Way! That's what I was talking about. So fantastic, guys. Check out the High Fat Diet on Amazon by going to smashthefat.com/HFDUK or HFDUS. Be sure to follow Zana on Twitter at Zana Morris as well. Again, Zana, thank you so much for your time today, and hopefully we can meet up within London and go out, I'll take you out for a steak.
Fantastic.
Or probably some salmon or some swordfish or something like that.
Steak is good too. Steak is good too. Thank you.
Either or. Fantastic. All right, Zana, again, thank you for your time today, and I'll speak to you soon.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam.
Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.